I need to talk to you about something today that most people avoid, something that makes us uncomfortable, something we push to the back of our minds and pretend doesn't exist. But at 70 years old, I've learned that pretending doesn't change reality. And the reality is this: our time here is limited, and sometimes our body tries to tell us when that time is running shorter than we think. Last year, I lost 3 friends, 3 people I had known for decades, and here's what haunted me about each of them. Looking back, there were signs, subtle signs that something was changing, signs that none of us recognized at the time, but now, with hindsight, seem so obvious. One friend complained for months that food just didn't taste the same anymore. He thought it was just aging. Another friend slowly stopped making plans for the future. She used to talk about trips she wanted to take, grandchildren's graduation she wanted to attend. Then one day she just stopped. The third friend started giving things away: his favorite watch, his fishing gear, things he had treasured for years. He said he was just decluttering, but now I wonder if somewhere deep inside, he knew. After losing them, I became obsessed with understanding what happens before the end. Not in a morbid way, not because I wanted to live in fear, but because I believe that knowledge is power. If our bodies give us warnings, shouldn't we learn to recognize them? Shouldn't we understand what they mean? So I researched. I talked to doctors and nurses who work with elderly patients. I read studies about the final years of life. I spoke to hospice workers who have witnessed hundreds of people in their final months. And what I learned was both sobering and strangely comforting. There are signs, subtle signs that often appear in the final year of life. Signs that most people miss or dismiss as normal aging. Today, I want to share 5 of these signs with you. Not to frighten you, not to make you anxious every time you feel tired, but to give you awareness. Because awareness allows us to prepare. Awareness allows us to cherish. Awareness allows us to live whatever time we have left with intention and purpose. Let me start with the first sign, and this one hits very close to home for me. The first subtle sign is a gradual loss of interest in food. Not just losing appetite for a day or two because you're feeling under the weather. I'm talking about a slow, persistent change in how you relate to eating. My friend Thomas loved food. He was the kind of person who planned vacations around restaurants he wanted to try. His wife made the most incredible roast chicken every Sunday, and Thomas would talk about it all week. Food was joy for him. Food was life. About 8 months before he passed, something changed. His wife noticed it first. Thomas would sit down for dinner and just push the food around his plate. He'd take a few bites and say he was full. She thought maybe he was stressed or not feeling well. She tried cooking his favorites. She made that roast chicken exactly how he liked it. But he'd take 1 or 2 bites and set down his fork. At first, Thomas made excuses. The food was too rich. His stomach was bothering him. He had eaten a big lunch. But the truth was, food had stopped mattering to him. The pleasure was gone. The anticipation was gone. Eating became a chore rather than a joy. What I learned from the doctors is that this is incredibly common in the final year of life. The body, in its wisdom, starts to slow down. The metabolism changes. The digestive system becomes less efficient. But it's more than just physical. There's often an emotional and spiritual component as well. The body seems to know, even when the conscious mind doesn't, that it needs less, because it's preparing for the end. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Losing your appetite for a few days or even a few weeks doesn't mean anything serious. Medications can affect appetite. Depression can affect appetite. Many treatable conditions cause temporary changes in how we eat. I'm not trying to make you panic every time you skip a meal. But if you notice a significant, sustained change in how you or someone you love relates to food, if eating goes from a pleasure to a burden over several months, if weight loss happens without any effort or explanation, pay attention. Talk to a doctor. And perhaps more importantly, have the conversations that matter while you still can. For Thomas, those final months could have been different if we had recognized what was happening. We could have said things that were left unsaid. We could have visited more. We could have made sure he knew how much he meant to us. Instead, we all assumed it was just a phase, just normal aging, and we lost time we can never get back. The second sign is something I call the quiet retreat. It's when someone who has always been engaged with life starts to pull back. Slowly, gradually. So gradually that you might not notice it until you look back and realize how much has changed. My friend Margaret was a force of nature. At 78 years old, she was busier than people half her age. She volunteered at the library every Tuesday. She played bridge with her group every Thursday. She babysat her great-grandchildren on weekends. She was always on the phone planning something, organizing something, connecting with someone. About a year before she died, Margaret started canceling things. At first it was just occasional. She'd skip bridge because she was tired. She'd ask her daughter to handle the babysitting because she wasn't feeling up to it. She stopped volunteering at the library, but said it was temporary, just until she got her energy back. Her family thought she just needed rest. They thought she'd been overdoing it for years, and her body was finally demanding a break. They were relieved, actually. They had been telling her to slow down for ages. Now she was finally listening. But Margaret wasn't slowing down to recharge. She was withdrawing from life. And there's a profound difference between the two. The withdrawal continued. She stopped returning phone calls. She started declining invitations to family dinners. She would sit in her chair by the window for hours, not reading, not watching television, just sitting. When her daughter asked what she was thinking about, Margaret would say nothing, just resting. What the hospice workers told me is that this withdrawal is one of the most common signs in the final phase of life. It's not depression, although it can look similar. It's the soul beginning to turn inward. It's the spirit starting to detach from the world and the relationships that once anchored it here. Some researchers believe this withdrawal serves a purpose. It's the person's way of processing their life, making peace with what has been, and preparing for what comes next. They're not rejecting their loved ones. They're beginning a journey that they must ultimately take alone. Recognizing this sign is important because it changes how we respond. If we think someone is just being antisocial or difficult, we might push them to engage more, guilt them about missed events, make them feel bad for pulling away. But if we understand what's happening, we can give them space while also making sure they know we love them. We can sit with them in silence. We can hold their hand without demanding conversation. We can be present without requiring anything in return. Margaret's family didn't understand this at the time. They felt hurt and confused by her withdrawal. They thought she was upset with them. They tried to drag her to events and got frustrated when she refused. Looking back, they wished they had simply sat with her more. They wished they had understood that her pulling away wasn't rejection. It was preparation. If you notice this happening with someone you love, don't fight it. adapt to it. Meet them where they are. Tell them you love them, and let them know it's okay. Whatever they're feeling, however they need to spend their time, it's okay. The third sign is a shift in how someone talks about time. Specifically, when someone who always talked about the future starts living almost entirely in the past. We all reminisce as we get older. That's normal and healthy. Our memories are treasures, and sharing them keeps them alive. I spend plenty of time thinking about my younger years, telling stories about things that happened decades ago. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about when the future disappears from someone's conversation entirely, when they stop making plans, when they stop saying things like, next summer, or when the holidays come, or I can't wait until, when their entire focus shifts to what was rather than what will be. My neighbor Harold was a planner. He always had something coming up, a trip he was researching, a home project he was going to tackle, his grandson's baseball season that he was going to attend. Harold lived with 1 foot in today and 1 foot in tomorrow, always looking forward to something. About 9 months before his death, I noticed the change. We would sit on his porch in the evenings and talk, like we had for years. But instead of telling me about his plans, Harold started telling me stories from his childhood, his father's workshop, the smell of his mother's bread, the dog he had when he was 10, the summer he worked on a farm. At first, I thought it was wonderful. I was learning things about Harold I had never known. But after a few weeks, I realized something was missing. He never mentioned the future anymore. When I asked about his grandson's upcoming tournament, Harold seemed confused, like he had forgotten it was happening. When I mentioned the holidays, still months away, Harold just nodded vaguely and went back to talking about 1962. The psychologists call this a life review. It's the mind's way of processing and integrating everything that has happened over a lifetime. It's finding meaning in the story of your life before that story ends. It's incredibly common in people who are approaching the end, even when they're not consciously aware that the end is near. What makes this sign both beautiful and heartbreaking is what it tells us about the person. They're not losing their mind, they're completing their mind. They're gathering up all the scattered pieces of their life and weaving them into something whole. They're making peace with who they were so they can let go of who they are. If you notice this shift in yourself, don't be alarmed, but perhaps consider it an invitation to do your own life review consciously and intentionally, to think about the moments that mattered, to reach out to people from your past who shaped you, to forgive old grudges and express old gratitudes, to write down stories for your grandchildren to read someday. And if you notice this shift in someone you love, cherish it. Listen to their stories, ask questions, record them if you can. These memories, these pieces of a life, are gifts they're giving you. Receive them with reverence. Because once they're gone, those stories go with them, unless you've taken the time to catch them. The fourth sign might surprise you because it doesn't sound like a warning at all. It sounds like something positive. It's when someone who has been anxious, fearful, or restless suddenly becomes calm, deeply, unusually calm. A peace that doesn't quite match their circumstances. My Aunt Dorothy was a worrier. Her entire life, she worried about everything: money, health, her children, the weather, things that hadn't happened yet and probably never would. Anxiety was her constant companion, and no amount of reassurance could quiet her mind for long. Then, about 6 months before she passed, Dorothy changed. The worry seemed to melt away. She stopped asking her usual anxious questions. She stopped needing constant updates on everyone's safety. She would sit with a gentle smile on her face, looking out the window at the birds, perfectly content. Her children thought it was wonderful. Finally, after 82 years, their mother had found peace. They assumed she had simply worked through her anxiety, perhaps gained some wisdom in her old age. They were relieved and happy for her. What they didn't realize was that Dorothy's sudden peace wasn't the resolution of lifelong anxiety. It was something else entirely. It was the calm that sometimes comes when the struggle is almost over, when the soul has made its peace with leaving. The hospice workers I spoke with told me they see this often. Patients who have been fighting, resisting, afraid, suddenly become serene. They stop arguing with doctors. They stop asking about treatments. They accept visitors with grace. They tell their loved ones not to worry, that everything is going to be okay. This peace isn't pretending, it's genuine. But it often signals that the person has crossed a threshold internally. They have accepted what is coming. They have released their grip on life. They are ready. I know this is difficult to hear. It seems cruel that something so beautiful, the finding of peace, could be a sign of approaching death. But I think there's something profound in it as well. It suggests that our deepest fear, the fear of dying, can be transcended. It suggests that there is a natural process of letting go that brings comfort rather than terror. It suggests that the end doesn't have to be a battle. It can be a surrender in the most peaceful sense of that word. If you notice this kind of change in someone you love, someone who was always anxious now becoming calm, someone who was always fighting now becoming accepting, let it be. Don't try to pull them back into worry. Don't interpret their peace as giving up in a negative way. Simply be with them in that peace. Let them know you love them. Let them know it's okay to feel however they feel. And if you notice this shift in yourself, perhaps it's not a sign of the end. Perhaps it's simply wisdom finally arriving. But either way, there's nothing wrong with using this newfound peace to tie up loose ends, to say the things you've been meaning to say, to live each remaining day with presence and gratitude. The fifth and final sign is fatigue, but not ordinary tiredness, not the kind of tired you feel after a long day or a poor night's sleep. I'm talking about a deep, bone-level exhaustion that doesn't improve with rest, a weariness that seems to come from somewhere beyond the physical body. We all get tired as we age. That's normal. Recovery takes longer than it used to. We need more sleep. We have less stamina. None of that is concerning on its own. But there's a different kind of tired that sometimes appears in the final year of life. A tiredness that sleep doesn't touch. A tiredness that exists from the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep again. A tiredness that makes even simple activities feel like climbing a mountain. My friend George was always an early riser. 6 o'clock in the morning, he was up, making coffee, reading the newspaper, ready to face the day. Even at 79, he maintained this routine. He prided himself on his energy, on keeping up with much younger people. About 7 months before he died, George started sleeping in. At first, it was just an extra hour, then 2 hours, then 3. His wife would find him still in bed at 9, 10, even 11 in the morning. When he finally did get up, He would move to his recliner and sit there most of the day, exhausted. He went to doctors. They ran tests. His blood work was normal. His heart was functioning adequately. They couldn't find a specific cause for his exhaustion. They suggested he might be depressed, gave him some pamphlets, and sent him home. But George wasn't depressed. He still enjoyed things when he had the energy to do them. He still laughed at jokes and lit up when his grandchildren visited. He just couldn't muster the energy to do much of anything. It was as if his body was running out of fuel, slowly but steadily, with no way to refill the tank. This kind of fatigue is sometimes called terminal fatigue, and it's believed to occur when the body's systems are beginning to fail at a fundamental level. The energy that has sustained us for decades is winding down. The engine is running out of steam. What made George's situation particularly painful was that everyone kept trying to fix it. His family pushed him to exercise more, thinking it would boost his energy. They criticized him for being lazy. They made him feel guilty for sleeping so much. They didn't understand that this wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a process to be witnessed. If I could go back, I would tell them to let George rest, to stop pushing, to understand that his body knew what it needed. Instead of making him feel bad for being tired, they could have simply been with him. They could have sat beside his recliner and talked. They could have let him know that it was okay to slow down, that he had earned the right to rest after 79 years of living fully. If you're experiencing this kind of unexplained fatigue, please see a doctor. There are many treatable causes of tiredness, and you should rule those out. But if the tests come back normal and the exhaustion persists, consider what your body might be telling you. Use the energy you do have for what matters most. Don't waste it on guilt or pushing yourself to meet others' expectations. Rest when you need to rest, and fill your waking hours with love, connection, and meaning. So now you know. 5 subtle signs that may indicate someone is in their final year of life. Loss of interest in food, withdrawal from activities and people, living in the past rather than the future, unusual peace and acceptance, and unexplained fatigue that rest doesn't fix. I want to say something very important before I close. These signs are not a death sentence. They are not a guarantee. Some people show these signs and live for many more years. Some people show none of these signs and pass suddenly without warning. The human body is mysterious, and predicting death is far from an exact science. But what these signs offer us is awareness, and awareness is a gift. If you recognize these signs in yourself, you have an opportunity to make sure your affairs are in order, an opportunity to have conversations you've been avoiding, an opportunity to say, I love you, I forgive you, I'm sorry, and thank you to the people who matter most. An opportunity to live whatever time remains with intention rather than unconsciousness. If you recognize these signs in someone you love, you also have an opportunity to visit more, to call more, to listen rather than fix, to be present rather than busy, to create final memories that will sustain you through grief, to ensure that when they go, nothing important was left unsaid. I think about my friends often, Thomas with his untouched roast chicken, Margaret in her chair by the window, Harold with his stories of 1962, Dorothy with her unexpected peace, George in his recliner. I miss them all terribly, but I'm also grateful for what they taught me, even in their leaving. They taught me that death is not something that happens suddenly and without warning. Often, it announces itself quietly if we know how to listen. They taught me that the end of life is not just an ending. It's a process with its own wisdom, its own rhythms, its own strange beauty. And most importantly, they taught me that time is precious, that every conversation could be the last, that every visit could be the final one, that every day we have with the people we love is a gift we too often take for granted. Thank you for staying with me through this difficult topic. I know it wasn't easy to hear, and I know it might have brought up emotions you weren't expecting. That's okay. Let those feelings come. They're a sign that you're alive, that you love, that you care about making your time here count. If this video resonated with you, I ask you to do something for me. Don't just move on to the next video. Take a moment to think about who in your life you might need to call, visit, or reconnect with. Think about what conversations you've been avoiding. Think about what you would regret leaving unsaid if tomorrow never came, and then do something about it. Today, not tomorrow. Today. Share this video with someone you love, not because the content is comfortable, but because it's important. Send it to a sibling, a friend, an adult child. Start a conversation that matters. Break through the small talk and get to what's real. If you're new here, I invite you to subscribe. I share honest conversations about life after 70, the good, the hard, and everything in between. No sugarcoating, no pretending, just truth, shared from one person who's walking this path to another. Until next time, take care of yourself, cherish the people around you, and remember, the fact that you're here, watching this, thinking about these things, means you still have time. Don't waste it. I'll see you in the next one.